Kia ora, kumasta, hola, namaste, hello and welcome to a webinar on everyday Kiwi English and farming slang. This webinar is for migrants working in the New Zealand dairy industry to give some explanations, tools and places to find information and video clips to help understand our Kiwi English. My name is Marianne Farrell and I'm the National Literacy and Numeracy Manager at Primary ITO, the industry training organisation for the primary sector, including dairy farming. So what is Kiwi English? Kiwi English is the everyday slang terms, sayings and words that you will hear in New Zealand. You will hear it across all sectors of the country, and in farming in particular, it is very common. The origins: British migrants, other migrants from the Pacific, for example, and Te Reo Māori. Some of our slang is shared with Australia, for example, barbie, as in barbecue, mate, g'day, which means good day. Different generations use different slang, and you might find young people use words like woke and lit, and older people could use terms such as cool, which isn't very modern these days. There are similarities with Australia, England, and the USA and other English-speaking countries, but there are also many differences. So, for example, jandals, which are the flip-flops or thongs that we wear on our feet, nappies in New Zealand, diapers in the USA. And in New Zealand, we might talk about trucks, but in the UK, they will talk about lorries. So why is it difficult to understand? Well, Kiwis speak fast. They don't realise it, but they do. And we often get told to slow down or could you repeat that? We have a unique accent. Apparently, when we say fish and chips, it sounds like fish and chips. And we also have a rise at the end of our sentences, which we don't even notice. There's some confusing slang terms and sayings. Many don't appear to make sense. When we ask, how are you going? You might think, well, by car, or I'm walking. But actually, we're just asking, how are you? Sweet as, that's another one like, how are you? How's everything? There's many words for the same thing. So, for example, metal, and especially on a farm, we might talk about metal as being the stone chips that we use in our driveways, but it could also mean metal as in a piece of metal, like a metal gate. And tea, that could be a cup of tea, or it could be a meal time in the evening. There's also many things that have the same words, such as chips, for example. So you've got your hot chips, you've got your chippies in a bag, and you've got wood chips that you might put in your calf pens. And you will notice when you move to different farms that they will have different terms for the same thing. So your cows who are on penicillin, for example, they could be called the peno mob, or they could be called the sick mob, the red mob because they've got red paint, the hospital mob, or even the lames. So it's checking with your employer what they call that mob on their farm. There's also, to keep things really confusing, different terms in different parts of the country. So in the North Island, for example, when we take the tails off our lambs, we call it docking. But if you're in the South Island, you'll be doing tailing. We have battens on our fences, wooden battens, and in the South Island, they call them droppers, and they're usually metal. So some common Kiwi slang words that you will hear every day. There's many ways to say hello. You could say, hi, g'day, how's it going? How are you? How are you doing? How's it? Kia ora, hiya, what's up, talofa lava. You'll hear all of those terms being used at various times. Most of those are very informal terms though. Same for goodbye. see ya, catch ya, later, see you later, bye, ciao, so long, ka kite, and cheers. All very informal ways of saying goodbye. We have different terms for meal times in New Zealand. So dinner here, sometimes it can be the midday meal and sometimes it can be the evening meal. Lunch is always midday. Tea is sometimes the evening meal, but it could also mean a cup of tea. So a short break. Supper time in New Zealand is usually in the evening after you've had your evening meal, and it might be a couple of biscuits and a cup of tea or coffee. While in Canada and the USA, supper is the evening meal. So if any of you have lived there, you will know you will be referring to supper as the evening meal. Smoko. Now that's a short break, can be usually mid-morning or mid-afternoon, and it's called smoko because of many people used to smoke and they'd stop and have a smoke then. These days, with not so many people smoking, it's still called smoko, but generally we stop, we have a cup of tea or coffee and maybe something to eat. A shout doesn't mean that you're shouting out. It means that somebody is buying either drinks or food, and it's their gift to everybody else. So it might be a morning tea shout, or it could be a shout down at the local bar or pub. A work do is when everybody gets together from that workplace and they might have the shared meal and shared drinks perhaps. And a get together is the same sort of thing, except it's not just for work, people that work together. So you might have a neighbourhood get together. You may have your farmer say to you to grab something. Go grab the cows. Grabbing doesn't mean using the grab on the front of your silage, on the front of your tractor that you grab silage with. It can mean fetch or round up or go and get them or bring them in. So if your farmer tells you to go grab the cows, he doesn't mean use your silage grab. When we talk about things being broken, there's a whole lot of words that we use in New Zealand to mean the same thing. So we might say it's stuffed or it's munted, it's knackered. And I've had people say to me that they thought their boss was saying he was naked when he said knackered, but he actually means he's tired or something's broken. It's had it, it's carked it, or it's buggered. All those terms can mean that something's broken. And in New Zealand, we tend to refer to time by the analog clock method, and we'll talk about 1:45 and 1:15. So when we say that, we mean it's 15 minutes before the hour. So if it's 8:45, we will say it's 8:45, or if it's 8:15, we will say it's 1:15. So when your boss says come back at 1:45, he means 15 minutes before the hour. This here's a little video where this really cool girl is giving a rundown on some New Zealand slang words, things that she has found confusing, and she's from Indonesia. So I recommend you watch this, you pause your computer and you watch this YouTube clip and then jump back on. So workplace slang, sayings and phrases. In New Zealand, workplaces are quite informal, and especially in farming, but they're also respectful. So even though we might call people, including the boss, by their first name, there's also a sign of respect there. We often use nicknames, and they can be a sign that people like you. And it might be that you end up with a nickname because you've done something funny or had a joke, or there's something about you that they like and they'll call you a nickname. We often abbreviate words, so gummies instead of gumboots, And a bike could be anything from a two-wheeler to a quad bike. So clarifying all the time is something that's really important if English isn't your first language. We'll often use body language instead of words. So we'll raise our eyebrows for yes, or we'll raise our chin as a yep, all good. We like small talk and chatter. So when you're milking, often there's a great conversation goes on. People talk about their day. They might talk about the weather or rugby or cricket or just whatever they're interested in. It doesn't mean you stop work. It means you can have a bit of a chat while you're doing your work. But Kiwis don't like to talk about money insofar as they don't like to talk about how much they're earning, and they don't like you to, if they tell you, they wouldn't like you to tell anyone else how much they're earning. It's kind of a just a thing about us Kiwis. So when you're communicating on the farm, you will find that teasing and joking can be quite common. It takes the stress away and a bit of pressure off if you can have a bit of a laugh. And you'll find often that your farmers, especially over calving, will want to stop work, have a bit of a like have a smoko or have a bit of a barbecue or something at the shed and have a bit of a chat and a joke around. Often softeners, they're questions rather than instructions. And it's something that is really, really common. So instead of saying, go and shift the fence, they will say, can you go and shift the fence? So can you go shift the fence? Can you go and do this? Can you go grab the tractor? Those aren't really questions, they're instructions. They're just being told to you in a friendly way. You will hear lots of swear words on the farm, most likely. Swearing is very common in the New Zealand vocabulary, and especially in the rural sectors. And it doesn't always mean that people are being offensive or offensive to you. So you might hear some words and think, oh, my boss is angry, but actually he's not. He's just, it can just be the way they talk, or if they are angry, they might be angry at something else, like the bike won't start, rather than you. So don't think because people are swearing that they are angry at you. And sometimes rude language can be joking and friendly. And New Zealanders and Australians are quite often, they'll have rude jokes that that may not be appropriate. And if it's not for you, then feel free to say, I don't like listening to that language. When you meet people, shake their hand firmly, both men and women, and look them in the eye with a smile. That's the way we greet each other in New Zealand. And also respect personal space. So don't stand too close. Don't look over their shoulder if they're trying to look at something on their phone. And just remember, stand back a little bit, particularly in this time of COVID. So some farming lingo and terms. So what I quite often hear are comments or questions like, jump on the bike, shoot down the race and grab the cows. So what your boss means is to put yourself on the bike, drive down the race and bring the cows in. He doesn't mean jump up and down on the bike, get a gun, shoot down the race and then grab the cows with the silage grab. So you may need to get it clarified with your boss when he says things like that, just to be sure that you know exactly what he's meaning. The same with when he says grab a bucket of metal. When I see that, I think he means the bucket on the front of a tractor and a pile of stones, not a little plastic bucket and any metal chains or bits and pieces you can find around the place. So clarify it. What do you do when you are told to get stuck in? In New Zealand, getting stuck in means try really hard. So help somebody out, give them a hand, get stuck in. Your farmer says he's knackered. Well, we know that one. It's not naked, it means he's tired. Often we'll refer to a sick animal as being crook, like a bit crook. Doesn't mean they're a criminal, it means that they're not well. And so farmers use slang words and terms without thinking how confusing they are. So don't be shy at asking them to repeat what they're saying or to clarify it. As I said before, ask your employer to repeat, text, or write down instructions if you don't understand. You don't want to be having a break of coffee and a rest when you're meant to be shifting a break for the cows. So be sure when your boss tells you and you hear him say the word break, which break he's talking about. Employers prefer to be told when something's gone wrong or is broken rather than find out about it later. They don't want you to bring the cows in for milking and then later on when they go to shift the break, find there's a dead one in the paddock. They would much prefer you to tell them that there's a dead cow and then they can deal with it. Using your initiative, if you see something that needs attention, deal with it then. Don't put it aside. If you have the time, deal with it then. Don't put it aside and think, oh, I'll worry about that later on. If you're grubbing a paddock and it's almost lunchtime, just finish off those last few thistles rather than going off for lunch and then coming all the way back. And take a little bit longer at lunch. And if your boss asks, say, well, I left 10 minutes later because I finished the paddock first. They will normally appreciate that. So some ways that you can learn Kiwi English effectively is to practice. Practice it every day. Socialise with other English speakers. So if there's a whole lot of you on one farm who speak a different language, make sure you're also practicing English with them and you will become more confident. With your children, speak both English and your first language. You'll be doing them a favour as well, making them bilingual. You could take some adult community education classes. In Ashburton, Thelma Bell runs conversational English classes. On your TV, there's a caption service called Able, and that puts the captions up and you can learn English at the same time. You can keep a notebook of all your new words that you hear and put in your language beside it. What does that word mean? There's also quite a bunch of translation apps, and using a dictionary from your own language can help as well. There's a variety of ways that you can learn English. So Pathways Awarua, it's an online tool which increases literacy and numeracy. There's also a read aloud option which supports learning English. And I thoroughly recommend that you go on there if you want to improve your English. You can use text-to-speech functions on computers, like Immersive Reader. And if you need English for residency, I suggest that you take lessons. New Zealand English is different to American English, particularly in the spelling. So, for example, organise and labour. And if you are sitting your test and you spell them wrong, you lose points. So you do need to learn the correct way. Where can you learn English? English Language Partners is an organisation in New Zealand that is funded to teach people English. There's also a language guide. You can go on the internet and find that. And then VoiceTube has subtitled movie trailers, videos, and music videos. More information, there's a bunch of YouTube clips. I've got them at the end of this presentation and you can click on them and hear Kiwis and people from other countries talking about Kiwi English. Immigration New Zealand, they have many resources and information. On this Dairy Women's Network website here, there's a glossary on Kiwi English glossary for dairy farmers. Dairy NZ, I think you will have all gone on the Dairy NZ website and had a look. There's lots of ways to learn English on there. And then there's a bunch of dairy farming Facebook pages. The main ones I found are for Filipinos, but there's also an Indian one, and I'm sure there's some South American and ones from other countries that you'll be able to look up and join. So here are the YouTube clips I was talking about. Very worth clicking on them, listening to them, and having a look to improve your English. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I hope that this has helped you in some way to get ideas on how to improve your Kiwi English and learn and understand our slang. Thank you.